It's time to sharpen up those edges and grease up your chains.
We are going to live it up with mountain life. Dropping in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, mountain lifers? Are you good? Are you happy with your winter? Are you ready to let it go? Some wise soul once told me that life is about holding on and letting go and knowing when to do which. So ponder that the next time you're out there on your own with time on your hands and let me know what you think. Speaking of being out there and alone and having all kinds of time to think, Stephan Kesting is on the show today. He's an adventurer and an author and a jiu-jitsu master and a firefighter who recently paddled 1,600 kilometers through some of the most bug-infested terrain in Canada. So we're going to talk about that, about his new book, and about suffering to achieve a goal, and all kinds of other stuff, including the potential resurgence of the blues as a musical genre, now that Western civilization seems to be increasingly circling the drain. But first, let's talk about time and hear from our Live It Up partners over at Citizen Watches. Time is important in the mountains. Out there in the wild, missing a rendezvous or misjudging how much daylight is left can have dire consequences. For over 100 years, Citizen have been known for creating quality timepieces and embracing ideas and actions that elevate society above self and respect the planet we love to explore. Need an altimeter or a pro-quality dive watch? Citizen's ProMaster series provide functionality, durability, and the spirit of adventure up in the air, on land, or at sea. With a huge line of professional-grade, sport-inspired designs, Citizen keeps you on time and makes every minute count. Find your next perfect timepiece at citizenwatch.com. Better starts now. Time, eh? Time is our most valuable currency. Some people say beauty is, but time affects beauty, so I think time still wins in the end. Of course it does. So pay attention to how you spend your time. And yes, for those of you paying close attention, I do realize we have been talking an awful lot about time the past few years here in the Mountain Life multiverse. I think it's a side effect of getting old. Age, of course, is just a number, and it's never too late to embark on the adventure of a lifetime. That's what Stephan Kesting did. For something like 2 decades, he had been dreaming of a 1,600-kilometer canoe trip through Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and up into the Nunavut tundra. And he finally took the time to do it. Alone, on a single transplanted kidney. And it took him 41 days, which is pretty wild considering a lot of the journey was paddling upstream. Stephan wrote a book about the trip and other parts of his life called Perseverance, Life and Death in the Subarctic. And here's me talking to him up in Squamish. And one final note to those who care about these things, there are 1 or 2 naughty words in this pod. Nothing even close to as bad as the music my kid listens to, but I wanted to flag that for sensitive ears. Okay, let's talk to Stephan. I like to come in hot. You know, this book's about your last trip, 1,000 miles, 41 days of paddling and dragging a canoe into some of the most remote and bug-infested terrain this country has. I've read the book. It feels like, is the landscape almost a backdrop and the real journey is all internal?
It's both. It's definitely both. I mean, the landscape of the Canadian North is incredibly beautiful and incredibly harsh. And really the only practical way to get up there is by canoe. So it's not so much that I love canoeing, but I love where it can take you, both physically and mentally. There's something about, in terms of the physical part of it, if you got dropped off there, 8,000 years ago after the ice went out, it would be this mess of lakes and rivers and creeks. It would look like somebody had dropped blue paint onto a green canvas from 30 feet up. There's really nothing like it in many places of the world. So the only practical way to travel through that country in the summer is either by helicopter or plane, right, or by canoe.
There's not really any walking going on.
Yeah, there are a couple exceptions. I mean, you could maybe, there are these land features called eskers, which are long highways of sand, but that would be the only way you could walk. So if you're not walking there in the wintertime, good luck.
Right.
So it's about getting into that landscape, but it also helps create the space to have these internal journeys.
Yeah.
And especially being out there, being in the wilderness, number one. And for me, and I'm not suggesting this for everybody, being out there alone creates that space.
Right. And I've talked to some other, kind of long haul adventurers before, and they always kind of see the same thing. But for you, how long does it take for you alone to disconnect from the old life and really get in the groove of what you're doing out there in the wild?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question, and I'd love to know what it is for other people.
Yeah.
But for myself, I find that about the 5, 6, 7 day mark, something happens, and it just starts feeling normal to wake up in a tent. It just starts feeling normal to jump in your boat and paddle for the whole day, and then cook dinner over a fire or stove, and then pitch your tent again.
Yeah.
At that point, the disconnection happens.
Generally, people say about a week is in my experience, which, for a lot of people, myself included, like the number of 7-day plus trips that a person will go on their life often isn't that high, right?
It's really hard to arrange these things unless that's the only thing you do. I mean, if you don't have kids, it's a bit easier.
Yeah.
If you don't have a job, that'd be a lot easier. If you were independently wealthy and had dedicated yourself. I mean, in my perfect life,
Yeah.
I would spend the summers canoeing and I'd spend the winters in Fiji.
Right.
And if you have a rich uncle who's given you a giant inheritance and you don't need all of that giant inheritance,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can afford a couple of mil.
If the book speaks to you, we'll put your contact information. So the book is called Perseverance, Life and Death in the Subarctic. And you start in Saskatchewan, mid-Saskatchewan, kind of paddle up through the northwest corner of Manitoba and then into Nunavut, and then end up, traversing east to Hudson Bay. 41 days, over 1,000 miles. A lot of that was upstream.
Yeah.
Like paddling upstream seems to be, not fun. You knew that it was going to be like that, but you've been thinking about this trip for a long time, even though it's like pretty heinous.
Yeah. Heading upstream is difficult and it's much slower. And it's funny, if you're talking about regular canoeing, you're thinking about horizontal distance covered, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go 30 kilometers a day. I'm going to go 50 kilometers a day. A really good day might be 70 or 80 kilometers. But when you're going upstream, you start thinking much more in terms of elevation.
Right.
I'm going to try climbing 10 meters. I'm going to try climbing 20 meters. And in that sense, it's kind of like, you could look at it as covering this territory going from the boreal forest out to the tundra. It's kind of like climbing up a mountain. You're trying to get up into the alpine. And I was trying to get up into, not the alpine, but the Arctic, which is kind of like the alpine just spread out over a
Right.
much larger horizontal distance.
You talk a lot about the tundra, and I really like how you say, you can look at it on a super macro level down low with these tiny little plants and flowers and little trees pushing up, or you can expand to the widest view you can take, and it's, equally beautiful and interesting. Had you spent much time up there before, or was this your longest stint in the tundra?
No, in my 20s. So I'm in my 50s now. In my 20s, I spent an awful lot of time outdoors, and basically any excuse I could get to get up north, either to Alaska, to Nunavut, or the Northwest Territories, I did. So I did my master's research on the Anderson River. I'd say that's probably the longest length of time I spent out in the tundra.
It was biology you were studying?
Yeah, it was biology. But, then along comes life, along comes kids, and you can't just, your risk calculus has to change when you have kids. I'm sure you felt this as well. Shit you might try in your 20s, worst case scenario, you fall off this cliff and you die. You have the right to take risks for your own life. Do you have risks to take? Do you have the right to take risks for leaving a father-sized hole in the life of one or several kids? That's a different question, harder to answer.
Yeah. Did you struggle with that when they were younger? Did it feel like you were giving up a part of your life that you loved, and then you came back to it? Or
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I love my kids, and that was a choice. But not all choices are easy, and sometimes you have to choose between two things that you love, and you love one a bit more. But it doesn't mean giving up the other thing is easy. So yeah, it's funny. Before I went on this trip, I was listening to my kid. My kid was in the next room. He was a video game and playing Fortnite or whatever. He's talking to his buddies. He's going, yeah. So my dad's going up in the Arctic. Yeah, there's polar bear. Yeah, it's kind of dangerous. But, don't get me wrong. If he died, I'd be sad. But on the other hand, it'd be kind of cool, too, if he got eaten by a bear. So,
yeah.
narrative is everything.
Teenage pride.
Yeah.
Buddy. Meanwhile, he's probably in a game just shooting people left, right, and center, right?
Putting father-sized holes into the lives of countless NPC children.
Totally in the metaverse. What about your childhood? You grew up in Ontario. What was it like? Was it a kind of outdoor based from the beginning?
It was a lot outdoor based. It's kind of a bit multiple personality. We lived in the city and in the country, and in Ontario, it's pretty normal to send kids off to camp in the summer, and those camps are always canoe camps. So
Right.
that was my introduction, I think. And then, I remember one of my first memories that I can, maybe I was 3, is waking up in a tent with my parents. So there was a lot of outdoor interaction.
Yeah.
And grew up on the Bruce Trail. If anyone's from Ontario listening, it's kind of a long trail that runs through Ontario and through an escarpment, sort of cliffy area.
Yeah. We've got a mountain life in Mountain Life Georgian Bay.
Exactly.
It's out of whatever town Blue Mountains in. I'm going to hear about not knowing the name of the town,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think there's a lot of our team.
That
up
trail
there.
runs right through that area.
Yeah.
So
And so your folks just regular city people that enjoy the outdoors on the weekend, or
yeah, I'll say my mom was much more adventurous than my dad, and she was trekking around South America in her 20s, and grew up in Switzerland. So Switzerland has this really wild outdoor culture. If you go to Switzerland now on a Friday,
Yeah.
and you take a train ride anywhere, you take a train ride between two cities, it's full of people, and they're normal people heading up with their backpacks and their hiking poles for the weekend, and there are just as many Swiss people doing that as tourists.
right?
So there's a real outdoor culture there in Switzerland that's kind of cool, and I think some of that must have gotten passed on.
Yeah. And you had brothers when you were
Yes.
young, so she must have been adventurous. 4 boys,
5 boys.
5 boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's no joke.
So yeah, it was a little bit rough and tumble, and we, if you live in the country, which we did at that point, it's pretty easy to open the door and kick them out the door and
Totally.
let them go make forts.
In those days, especially, right?
Well, I think country life is still a lot like that. I don't want to romanticize it too much, but that's certainly an aspect. You have a dog. You have a dog in the city. You can't go just kick them out the door the way that they did when I did when I was young. You have kids. You could let them run around, but in the country, that's still the way.
I mean, we're going to come back to this book. We're going to come back to writing, but something that maybe some people don't know, especially our listeners, is you're actually a podcast expert yourself. You come from a strong line of martial arts. You've written lots of instructional martial arts books. Your podcast, I think episode 420 just came out.
Yeah.
So, not quite 10 times more than us, but you've been in that space since 2000 and what, 8, 5?
Something like
Yeah.
I started releasing the grapple art stuff in 2003.
And was martial arts something you got into as a kid as well? Or?
For sure.
Right.
For sure. So I think, martial arts is usually done in relation to another person. And certainly when I'm out in the bush, I don't only do solo trips.
Yeah.
I enjoy doing trips, generally smaller groups. I've guided larger groups. That's different. You're doing that for money.
Yeah, that's a job.
It's a job. It's a pleasant job. It's better than working at the Wonder Bread factory, which I also did.
Oh, wow.
But if I had to choose between guiding a bunch of people down a river or working at the Wonder Bread factory, I'll take guiding people down the river. But it's very different from going in a group, and going in a group is very different from going by yourself.
Right.
So to answer what was your question?
I don't know. I think it was just more about, in the book it seems like there's a lot of an internal monologue going and stuff about, the name is perseverance, but there's also, perspectives on struggle, preparation, adaptation, risk, determination. Mm-hmm. How does the martial arts mindset play into your adventuring?
Well, let me expand that a little bit. So there's martial arts. I am a professional firefighter. I've been doing that for 25 years. And then there's the outdoor stuff. So what's the commonality there? Certainly, almost by definition, the fire department stuff is in teams. Martial arts is mostly done in relation to one other person, the person that you're sparring against or training with. And let's just talk about the solo expeditioning stuff. The common thread there is you're creating, or you're putting yourself into situations where you have to problem solve, where you have to, use your body and your mind together. The solution is usually not just think harder. The solution is think and then do something physical.
Yeah.
So it's physical problem solving. And I really like that. And I also really like training for something and then doing it. So that's, when I got into firefighting, I thought, well, what do I really enjoy about martial arts? I enjoy practicing how to, I don't know, whatever, do an armbar, practicing how to do a combination to set somebody up, and then going and trying it. And sometimes the bug of theory ends up being a splot on the windshield of reality. Hey, that totally didn't work.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure that was going to work. That totally didn't work. And sometimes it works great. And so if you're getting ready for the outdoors, you can train to do something, and then you can go and do it, right? So the training or the preparation for an expedition might have different parts. You might be thinking about, what am I going to be eating? Let's try out different recipes. Let's make them. Let's make sure I do enough whitewater paddling in tiny little playboats so that my whitewater skills are sharp. But at the same time, let's also experiment with different ways of tricking out the boat so that it can go long distances faster. So you get to try it and train for it and then do it in real life. Kind of like, I don't know, going to the climbing gym and then scrambling up the chief.
One interesting thing I felt with the book, even though you have this mindset and you it seems like it's been working for you for a long time, you still got, surprised out there a couple times.
Yeah. I mean, without a plan, you're screwed. But, there is definitely the danger of getting complacent. So I think I got majorly hosed in the first couple hours of the trip.
With your sail.
Yeah. So just in case people haven't read the book, which
we don't want to give too much away, but yeah, give this away.
I'm happy
to
give this away. So I'd been planning this trip roughly for 20 years and then very intensely for a year. I am legitimately a pretty damn good paddler. I'm a whitewater instructor. I've guided trips. I've raft guided trips. I've canoe guided trips. I've spent a lot of time in the outdoors. I've done my 10,000 hours. And so I was eager to get going. I was a little bit impatient. And you start out a trip, that's a lot of weight. That's 250 pounds of food, just under. Bags of stuff, fairly small boats. You're trying to cram it all in there. And it wasn't well packed. It was a bit top heavy. But let's go. I've been waiting for this for so long. Let's just go. And we get going and going pretty fast. And got a nice tailwind. I pitch a little sail to help me go a bit faster. I'm making about 8 kilometers an hour, which is pretty fast in a canoe. And I'm like, hey, this is not going too badly. Then I put down my paddle to check my map, and I'm holding my map, and the wind shifts. And I hadn't been paying attention how the wind had been shifting and how gusty it was. It hit the sail sideways, toppled me into the water, and now it's a yard sail out on it's a river, but it was a pretty wide section of river at that point. It was more like a lake. And so I'm 2 hours into this 50-day trip. I thought it'd be 50 days.
Yeah.
And I've just
fucked
swimming up severely. My gear's floating all over the lake. There were downstream consequences of that took weeks to sort out. And you're kind of hoping somebody's going to come by and rescue you, because there's self-rescue techniques that work fine on a mill pond or at the pool. But if you're trying to do it in a wavy, choppy situation, good luck. You can't roll that boat. And kind of hoping that somebody come by and help, and kind of hoping that nobody comes by and help because you're too embarrassed. So yeah, that was a huge comeuppance, and really what it was complacency.
Right.
So then,
because had you used that, you'd practiced with that sail before, or just in different conditions?
Different conditions.
Yeah.
Different conditions, and not enough.
Yeah.
But I should have been paying attention to not only, hey, I'm making good time. I should have been paying attention to it's getting choppier. I should have been paying attention to not only there's a good wind here, but the wind is shifting all the time. Right? There's steady wind and there's shifting wind, and these are things you become attuned to eventually. And in that case, it was a crash course in like, hey, dumbass, pay attention and don't get complacent.
And if you'd been holding your paddle instead of your map, you could have braced.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Usually errors, when things go massively wrong, it's a cascade of little things, right? I'm trying to think of another example, but it's usually not just one mistake.
Right. Yeah. It's a symphony of little death by a million paper cuts. Yeah. I have a question about the gear, just because most people think canoe, they think like the red Coleman that I have in the yard that everyone kind of grew up in. But this expedition canoe, it's a lot different.
Sure, it's kind of a canoe kayak hybrid.
Right.
So it's open, so it's a little bit easier to put gear into it. Because
Yeah.
a sea kayak, say I'd gone in a sea kayak, a couple of disadvantages. The main one being being able to store enough gear
Yeah.
and access your gear. So,
Right.
I mean, the easiest thing to transport gear is an open canoe. You just throw your stuff in there. Maybe you tie it in, maybe you don't. There are different schools of thought there. But if you come to a portage, hey, you just lift your stuff out.
Yeah.
If you're down on your knees rooting around under the deck of a sea kayak, but you have to do that 5 times in a day to pack and 5 times in a day to unpack for each portage, that gets old in a hurry.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a bit of both: covered nose, covered.
Covered nose, covered stern, open area right behind the seat. It's the C1 made by Western
Right.
Canoeing down the road here in Abbotsford.
And for the paddle, it's a two-bladed.
It depends. I took there's a guy called Cliff Jacobson who wrote a really good book called Canoeing Wild Rivers. That and Path of the Paddle are my 2 favorite canoeing books.
Yeah.
And what he said, I remember this from the very first time I read it, if you go north, take 3 paddles because you might break one and lose the other.
Yeah.
And so I took 3 paddles. I took a whitewater paddle, a single-bladed, solid, heavy paddle, a bent shaft carbon fiber paddle, which is more efficient for flat water, and then a double-bladed kayak paddle. And the thought was, if I break one and lose the other, I'll still have a third. But the thought was also, if I start wearing out a body part or my shoulder, my wrist or my elbow starts giving me trouble, then I can change the type of paddle. I don't know, if you're skiing all day and your knees begin hurting, maybe switching out to a snowboard middle of the day might help you because you'd be wearing out a different set of joints.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
have you ever had to carve a paddle in the field? Like, did you learn that the hard way?
I've never had to carve a paddle. I've had to carve poles, right?
Right.
For going upriver, you can use a pole. It's kind of like, punting your boat at Oxford.
Yeah. Yeah.
While some girl's sitting in the front. Yeah, it's kind of like the wilderness version of that, where you're standing upright and pushing your way up the river, climbing it with a pole. I have broken those and had to carve that. I did meet a guy who had to carve his own paddles. He got dropped off on some river in northern British Columbia. I want to say the Turnagain, but I could be wrong. And they got dropped off, and there goes their plane. And holy crap, we forgot our paddles. So they spent the first 2 days having to carve it. Haven't done that yet, and that'd be hard to do on the tundra too.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Weave tiny willow branches together to
Totally.
make hand paddles or something?
What else? Talk about the tundra a little bit more, because it plays such a big role in this journey and in the book and in the, I think a lot of Canadians have never seen it. But what do you remember most about it, or like most about it, or what's one thing everyone should know about life on the tundra?
Well, those are different things. What people should know is, I mean, one of the worst things about life on the tundra are the bugs. The
Yeah.
bugs are just unbelievable. A large river up there can produce 1 billion black flies per day, per kilometer at the peak of black fly season. So there are things that you can do. There are things I can do. You don't go up there without a mosquito net. You'd be an idiot too. But what about the native people who lived there for thousands of years before us?
Yeah.
Maybe they're rubbing some oil on their skin. Or so I've heard rancid bear grease is one thing that they've used historically. I don't know which groups use that. I don't want to overstate my case. But man, when your skin is literally crawling with black flies, that's tough. People who go up there and, I don't like the bugs. Yeah, it's a little bit like going into outer space and saying, hey, I went into outer space and I really hated it. Well, were you wearing a spacesuit? No. You have to have the right gear.
Yeah.
The best thing is also the animals. I've been lucky to catch the full caribou migration a couple of times in my life, and that's astounding to see.
Yeah.
That is amazing, just to see thousands of animals moving according to their own rhythms of where they're trying to have their calves and how they're trying to go for food and then go for shelter. To see that and kind of be part of that is amazing. Seeing polar bears is pretty cool too. I didn't see polar bears on that particular trip, but I've done now 5 trips that have ended on the Hudson Bay coast and
Right.
gotten lucky or unlucky a couple of times.
It's nice to see them from far away.
Yeah, I've seen them far away and close up. The Hudson Bay coast is something special because Hudson Bay is so damn big So call it 800 kilometers across and I think 1,100 kilometers south to north. In the winter, that's all covered with ice and bears hunting seals. And when all that ice melts, they end up on the coast waiting for the winter to come again and fasting. So they're going like, I think 150 to 180 days without food.
Wow.
And so, yeah, they're grumpy. And they're really quite dense along the coast. So on one trip, I saw 14 polar bears in 24 hours. That was pretty cool. I was very glad that there was a small cabin to stay in overnight on that particular trip.
Yeah.
The cabin was amazing. It just, every surface of it was just studded with nails poking out. It looked like a porcupine.
Right. That's one of the prevention techniques so the bears don't rip it open, or?
Yeah, well, it delays how long it takes them to rip it open. They're pretty creative.
Wild. Back to the planning. A line that stood out for me was, the way to do these kind of things and be as safe as you can is to be a short-term pessimist and a long-term optimist.
Yeah.
Can you just give an example of how that is in action on this trip?
Sure. Well, you have to be a long-term optimist because if you're a long-term pessimist, this is going to be a terrible trip.
Yeah, we're
it's
never
not going to work.
It.
You're never going to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're never going to make it. Oh. But at the same time, you can't be a Pollyanna and go, oh, everything's going to work out fine. So you have to think about everything that can possibly go wrong. One easy thing, before this trip, I went to my doctor and I'd taken a look at other people's medical kits. And I came with a long list of prescription medications, and he added a few more. So now, how many different kinds of antibiotics are you taking, Kesting? Well, yeah, what if I take it and whatever I've got is resistant to that antibiotic? And then there are different antibiotics that work better for, flesh infections, tooth infections, urinary tract infections, what have you. So I should know the number of antibiotics I had. This is just focusing on a really small thing.
Yeah.
But of course, at the same time, you're limited by how much stuff you can take.
Yeah.
So the weight and space restrictions are a little bit less than for climbing because you can carry it in a boat, not in your backpack. But that doesn't mean that you can take an infinite amount of stuff.
Yeah, you can't take a propane fire ring.
Exactly.
How many of those antibiotics did you end up using in the end?
I ended up taking antibiotics once because fairly early in the trip, my hand swelled up about the size of a grapefruit with no notice. So it was one of two things. It was either an overuse injury, I'd torn or strained something, and there was some bleeding and swelling in the inside, or it was an infection. And I don't have a lab out there. I don't know.
Yeah.
So after thinking about it, I decided the best thing to do would be start taking antibiotics prophylactically and kind of do a reconnaissance by fire. Let's take the antibiotics and see if they help, and hopefully they'll stop it from getting worse. In the end, I think it was an overuse injury.
Right. But you didn't stop paddling.
No, I didn't stop paddling.
It just got used to it, or?
I figured out ways to modify my technique to use less finger strength, essentially. And it did eventually resolve and go away.
Speaking about going to the doctors, I mean, part of the book, I think it's not too much of a secret, but you did this trip with one kidney,
No.
and it wasn't your own. Okay, tell me about that. That you had to have a kidney transplant. How many years before this?
That was 4 years before the trip.
Right.
So I have had polycystic kidney disease. It's a genetic thing that you inherit from one of your parents. And my mom had it, and she made it into her early 70s and then died of something else.
Right.
But everybody's different, and maybe all that martial arts stuff and getting punched and thrown over the years,
Kicked in the kidneys.
kicked in the kidneys didn't help. Maybe all the anti-inflammatories I took because of training and because of paddling.
Yeah.
You just pop an ibuprofen. You've heard vitamin I, the paddler's vitamin.
Sure.
I'm sure there's equivalent things for vitamin I in other sports. Yeah, true. It does help your pain, but it also erodes your kidney function. So in my 40s, eventually it was figured out that I had this. And eventually my doctor's like, hey, do you know anyone who can give you a kidney? And that's a hard, that really brings it into focus.
Yeah.
And, I did not want to ask people for a kidney. I would have billion times rather have given a kidney than asking people for a kidney. So in the end, I asked for my brother's kidney, and I was so in my head about it that I did it the bravest way possible. I sent him a text. Hey, can I have your kidney? The message came back, yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a little bit in debt to him.
And it worked out. It was a proper match, everything.
Yeah, it was a proper match. And I'm O negative, which is one of the harder types to match. So here's to the, as long as we can do this without releasing some kind of swine flu on humanity.
Yeah.
They're working on doing pig kidney transplants, which would solve this problem.
Right.
But they have to strip out all the antigens from the pig kidney. We're a few years out, but hopefully that comes along.
So when you were, fighting the urge to start asking for someone for a kidney, you also had this trip on your mind through the whole time. How dark did it get where you're like, oh man, I'm not gonna be able to do this trip? Or were you able to keep that long-term optimism the whole time?
Oh, I wasn't able to keep the long-term optimism the whole time. Self-doubt and fear of mortality is pretty omnipresent, especially at a time like that, right? It's there's this idea of memento mori. Remember, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like actually dying or being in the process of dying from an illness to remind you that you're going to die. So there are a couple levels of negative outcome. Number one is dying on the slab, right? Things go wrong in operations all the time.
It happens.
It's not a high percentage, but call it 1 or 2%. Then there's the possibility of getting fixed enough to live, but not fixed enough to do.
Yeah.
And with the martial arts, with the firefighting, with the outdoor stuff, that's all very physical. And so when you've defined yourself through that, and now hypothetically you can't do it anymore, which I got to experience a little bit as my kidney function was dropping,
right,
unable to do the things that I took for granted, that is a harsh reality call. And so what if, after all, going through all this surgery and stealing my brother's kidney and having it jammed into my body, what if I was just barely functional? What if my new level of existence is going from the couch to the bathroom? That's a hard one to wrap your head around. As it turns out, there were definitely some major problems post-transplant. For one thing, you're on pretty heavy doses of immunosuppressants. So you start getting all these super weird infections that normal people don't have to deal with.
Right.
Flesh-eating disease. At one point.
Good times.
Oh yeah, that was awesome. And you start becoming familiar with where the hospital stores the antibiotics of last resort. Hey, what you've got is resistant to almost everything.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to go to that one antibiotic that stays locked up and needs special permission.
The Ferrari of antibiotics.
Yeah. Probably costs a Ferrari as well.
Yeah. But it all worked out. What was the recovery like? When did you start to feel after the surgery? We're like, oh yeah, no, it's coming. It's going well.
It's hills and valleys. It's going. The first couple of days are pretty painful. I mean, for one thing that I didn't expect, as your kidneys fail, your body does this weird thing, juggling electrolytes, taking calcium, magnesium out of your bones and putting it in your blood, just frantically trying to preserve your blood pressure.
Right.
And so when you get a functioning kidney, and all of a sudden your kidney function goes from, 12% up to 50%, it starts reversing all that all of a sudden. So you end up with, I'm not complaining about this, but really weird stuff like growing pains.
Right.
Like when you're 12 years old and your shins felt like someone was jamming a knife into them. I'm 50 years old and it feels I've got growing pains again. So it was hills and valleys. 6 months after the transplant, I ended up doing sort of the first physically difficult thing. We did the Neenacker in the middle of winter. So that's a 50-kilometer mountain trail here on the North Shore of Vancouver. People run it in some ridiculous time, like 4.5 hours. I didn't run it, and it was the middle of winter and wading through knee-deep snow for a lot of it. But I think we did it in 18 hours. So still, I'll take it.
A heavy push.
50, heavy push, and I didn't die, and the kidney didn't fall out of my body.
Yeah.
But then, of course, like the next month, hey, you've got another infection. Okay, so it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back for quite a while.
Right. Well, I think it's a good time to take a little break here, and then we'll be right back. Hey, buddy, have you got the time? Or is it time to get yourself a new Citizen watch? Did you know their EcoDrive watches are powered solely by light? Any kind of light. Or that their atomic timekeeping watches are constantly syncing with atomic clocks all over the planet to ensure your watch's margin of error never exceeds 1 second every 10,000 years. Check out that kind of wild tech and all their other great watch options at citizenwatch.com. Okay, we're back. Because we just ran a spot with Citizen Watches, our pod sponsor. I wanted to talk to you about time and your equipment on the trip. Did you bring a watch? Was time just sun up to sundown sort of thing, or were you keeping more closely track of that?
I was keeping close track of time. I was mostly on that trip, I was using a phone. On subsequent trips, I've started using a Garmin watch as well.
Right.
In part to monitor my sleep, because sleep is such a large part of recovery on multi-day longer expeditions. Anybody can push through anything for a couple of days.
Yeah.
But you can't push through continuously for 50 days without major deterioration. And so, trying to dial that in a little bit in the last couple of years, trying to improve the quality of sleep I'm getting in the bush.
Yeah. And it's not like you're 23 years old anymore, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's yeah. And I'm not on TRT like every other, 50-year-old fitness guy is. I'm not opposed to it, but, to be on TRT and all this immunosuppression stuff and all the stuff that I'm on for the kidneys, like that ends up being a real dog's breakfast.
Yeah.
But so I was keeping track of time. Sometimes, mostly on my phone on that version of the trip.
Right.
But then you also have time on your Garmin.
Yeah.
So in terms of electronics, I had my phone, which I was using for documentation, also for writing notes. Really, the only recreation or downtime I had on that trip was journaling and keeping track of.
And would you do speech to text or type
I
it in?
did speech to text and type it in, and then also notes, for when I was writing the book, when I decided to turn those notes into the book, I had to go back to the maps because I'd have written notes on the maps.
Yeah.
I had to go back to the voice to text. I had to go back to, I record a couple short podcast episodes out there. I had to go back to the notes I'd written on the phone. I also had a small paper notebook. So I didn't have a book planned.
Right.
So it ended up being forensic research.
Right.
What was I thinking that day? For me, I found the photos really useful because everybody remembers, has different triggers for memory.
Yeah.
And for me, I can look at a photo and go, oh yeah, that was the day when that happened.
Yeah.
And that's how I was feeling at that time. And this is what I had to consider for the next thing. So for me, the photos were really useful. For other people, it might be notes.
Yeah. Sticking with the technology, you had a way to communicate with your wife. Your wife, you got married the day before you left, so pretty understanding wife. So you had a way to communicate with her.
In my defense, I had that trip planned for leaving June 31st before she proposed to me.
Right.
So
yeah.
So
it was.
But she has not held that against me. To her infinite credit, she didn't hold that against
How
me.
often would you be in touch with her? I know, there'd be stuff like weather. You would want to know a bit better weather reports than you were getting.
Yeah. So in the spirit of redundancy, and if you take two paddles, you could break one and lose the other. I had multiple ways of communication because communication really does form a safety net for everything else. I remember listening to Will Gadd speak. Will Gadd, the ice climber out of Calgary, out of Canmore, I guess. And he was arguing it was unethical to go into the bush without some kind of spot device or a Garmin that has satellite messaging. Because if you disappear, there are going to be people looking for you.
Yeah.
And they're risking their own lives. And they could be spending days of their time trekking up and down dangerous, in his case, avalanche slopes, looking for your corpse. Whereas if you could just send a message, I am here, need help.
Yeah.
That helps search and rescue so much. So I would argue that at this point, it's kind of weird to be connected to the outside world. But, you do have responsibilities outside of yourself. And this is multiplied if you have a wife, if you have kids. You have to do, hedge the bet, hedge it so that the odds are in your favor.
Yeah.
So communication. I had a sat phone, which I hardly ever used because the minutes on a sat phone are ridiculously expensive. So I rented that. I used it. It was useful sometimes. I had a Garmin, which you can send little messages on. It's pretty difficult typing. So most of my messages were, doing okay, miss you.
It's bare minimum communication.
Minimum communication. I mean, you could pair it to your phone if you wanted,
Right.
but now you've got two items that are sucking power, and it also provided a backup in case the maps were completely destroyed or lost. And then in addition to that, I also had what's known as a BGAN unit. It's kind of like think of it as Starlink that connects to only one satellite in the sky and is ridiculously expensive. So it's about $1,000 a gigabyte to transmit information.
Right.
But if I had to, I could have sent a message saying, hey, I've broken my leg.
Yeah.
I am on the north shore of Idaho Lake.
Yeah.
Send float plane. Or I'm bleeding out. Send seesaw out of Edmonton.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I'm okay. So having redundancy, you don't need to just have the same way of doing something, but you need multiple ways of doing something. I would argue that being able to paddle, being able to light a fire, being able to have some kind of shelter, and being able to communicate, those are things that require some redundancy when you're out in the bush. What's
your relationship with technology, back in your regular life? Obviously, you've got hundreds of podcast episodes. You have this martial arts website. Do you struggle with technology, with social media and that, like a lot of people do?
I think so. I think in my ideal world, I'd be a Luddite and have no presence at all. That being said, that's not a reality if you run a business.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get over that. And, I made the decision a long time ago to get over that. I think also I'm an introvert, which doesn't mean I sit and rock in the corner with my arms crossed in a dark room when I'm not talking to people. But it does mean that, I need downtime. And of course, the access of the internet and social media, it's designed to be the exact opposite of that. And I think, we're getting off topic here, but so many of the problems in the world today can be explained by algorithms maximizing for your time spent on that platform. YouTube does whatever it can do to keep you on YouTube.
Yeah.
And if you start going down a rabbit hole, a flat earth rabbit hole, say, it will reinforce this as much as it can because it wants to keep you on YouTube. Same for Facebook, same for Twitter, same for TikTok. Oh, you really like, let's pick a ridiculous example, girls doing their makeup while they're bouncing on a trampoline in a bikini. TikTok will find every last video of that and they'll figure out, oh, Kesting likes girls doing their makeup, bouncing on a trampoline in a bikini in the morning, but not in the evening. In the evening, he likes to, I'm making this up, watch Warhammer videos. So that is one excellent reason to go into the bush, to disconnect.
Yeah.
And so although I was on this trip and on other trips, I do transmit some of, photos and some updates from the field. It's all one-way communication. I don't post it directly to Instagram or to Facebook or whatever.
Right.
I put it in a folder and it goes to somebody else and they post it. So it's outward flow of information.
Yeah.
And also, that way if I lose my boat, if it goes to the bottom of the rapid and gets smashed into a million pieces, at least there's some memory, and I survive.
Yeah.
At least there's some memory of the trip that exists off of my devices.
What's a piece of gear that is essential to you it could be any adventure, but on a paddling adventure or something that maybe other people don't think of that you always make sure you have?
I think really high quality rain gear is probably the most important thing you can have. And a lot of people take rain gear, but I remember taking my family, my mom and my brothers and my dad up to James Bay on the Missinaibi River. So it's remote. It's into the Hudson Bay lowlands, but it's not super crazy remote. But after a week of paddling, it started to rain, and my mom opened up her bag and took out the raincoats for everybody. And I had my high quality rain gear, and she had brought, like a nylon windbreaker for everyone else, because that's what she wore in the city.
Yeah.
And so that's my fault because I was the person who had experience.
Yeah.
So people think they have rain gear, but they don't. And if you're wearing something for hour after hour after hour in just a downpour conditions, that's the thing that can maybe keep you alive. So I currently wear the severe weather Arc'teryx stuff. It's ridiculously expensive. Good thing they've got a warranty on it for when I break it.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in hearing from other people they found stuff that's comparable to that. I imagine Helly Hansen with their sailing stuff makes some pretty good material, but whether that would have enough mobility for paddling in the shoulders and whatnot, I don't know.
Yeah.
And the other thing to consider for water sports is it's kind of like a low budget wetsuit.
Yeah, you talk about that. There was no decision to make to bring a dry suit or a wetsuit. Like
I've
you were in
played-
the water a lot waiting.
I was in the water a lot waiting. Dry suits are so finicky, right? You blow a gasket on them, trying to repair those in the field. Also, it's something I've toyed with is what if I didn't take a raincoat? What if I just took a dry suit? That could possibly work, especially if it was a breathable one, made out of Gore-Tex or something like that. But you're in the tent and you need to whip out to go grab something from your canoe and it's raining. What are you going to do? You're going to
Chuck on a dry suit.
chuck on a dry suit? Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
So I have taken wetsuits on other trips and worn them for the more intense whitewater. Two things. Number one, it's yet another thing to carry. Number two, okay, you and I are paddling across a lake and we see some rapids leaving the lake. All right, time to put on the wetsuit. We are in bug country.
Yeah.
You will sustain 1,000 bites putting on that wetsuit. And do you really want to be in a wetsuit all day long? I mean, I don't mind wearing a wetsuit for, creek boating for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
But to wear that day after day after day, that would be probably an unpleasant experience.
It would probably stink.
Yeah.
What else have we got here? So we talked about health. You can max it out at the end, but how did you know, you did get a few days of rest, but it was mostly weather induced.
Mm-hmm.
But how are you able to keep on top of, I know I need more rest, but I also know I need to cover this amount of distance. What's the balance? How did you work that?
Yeah. So because it was such a long distance and because there's a hard limit, you have 50 days of food, and there's another hard limit, which is the Hudson Bay coast starts getting more and more dodgy as you get later into the summer. In late August, you can get some pretty big storms. It's entirely possible to be pinned down for 5 days as one of those Arctic storm systems moves through. And so now you're at day 48 and, you get pinned for 5 days and then something goes wrong with your pickup. It could get dodgy. So I was pushing it as hard as I could. At the same time, you're wearing your system down. It's like trying to live off of a credit card, right? You can go buy lunch with a credit card, no problem. But if you're buying breakfast, lunch, dinner, gas, breakfast, lunch, dinner, gas off your credit card and never putting anything back into it, you're going to end up with some major problems. And your health is kind of the same way. You keep on exerting yourself without proper recovery, you can end up in some pretty bad places. And I'll say that my recovery on that particular trip was not up to par. I didn't do a good enough job on quality of sleep. I mean, there's quantity of sleep and then there's quality of sleep. And I've since, started doing things like wearing a sleep mask at night. I started playing a little bit with taking CBN. So that's a cannabinoid that doesn't screw you up mentally at all. And that helps a little bit with sleep, especially on a trip. And the times that I've had to wake up in the middle of the night because, a bird flew into the bear alarm, I was instantly awake.
Yeah.
And I tested that before. So that I felt fairly safe doing. What else? Improving the mattress I was on. And then trying to have a little bit of a downtime before going to bed.
Right.
Just even, the wrong thing to do is to go as hard as you possibly can, then rush to set up camp, then eat something, and then go to bed now to sleep.
Yeah.
Good luck.
But that could have been an 18-hour day of paddling, right?
Yeah. So you don't always get a choice. The rest versus, but that's same for anybody who's trying. Anyone who's doing an ultra marathon or a multi-day anything, is juggling with these two things. When Kilian Jornet did his circuit of the Alps, they're climbing, what was it, every peak over, was it 4,000 or 5,000 meters in some ridiculously short number of days. I guarantee you he wasn't getting a good 10 hours of sleep every night.
Yeah.
So you're essentially, to some extent, rolling the dice.
And it's a lesson you can take into your regular life too, right? Even though you're not exerting yourself as much. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to notice.
You're going to notice, and yes, there's obvious physical effects. There's also mindset effects. The difference between having to, let's take something outside of the wilderness thing, having to write some article for my website when I've had a crappy night's sleep versus having a good night's sleep, it's night and day. One is like, oh, this is an interesting challenge. How do I do this better? And the other one is, oh my God, this is so stupid. I hate this.
Even first thing in the morning compared to last thing at night, I find a huge difference in how the...
When do you peak? You peak in the morning?
Yeah, I'll oftentimes write some part of the article, usually the introduction, in my sleep, and then wake up with it, and then go and then ride that momentum and crush it in.
Oh, wow.
In an hour, I could get done what would take 3 hours if I started at 10 at night.
Yeah.
Sometimes, generally, that's the way it goes. I wake up with the idea.
For me, historically, I was always most productive at night.
Yeah.
But of course, you have kids, and you got to get up at
night
6
is
in the morning.
nice because the whole world's quiet,
Yes.
right? And there's not a bunch of other energy buzzing around your
Well,
brain.
that kind of takes us back to, solo trips. The world is quiet.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're out there thinking grand thoughts and musing about the nature of the universe. Most of your day is spent with the minutia of like, oh, the boat's heeling a little bit to the left. I should fix that. Oh, my right elbow's hurting again. I wonder if I should shift my position of how I'm sitting. Yeah, my butt's hurting. Should I have water? When's the last time I had water? Oh, look at those clouds. They've changed. And we talked about how I completely screwed up through complacency in the first couple hours of the trip. What's the solution to that? Continuously being on yellow alert.
Yeah.
Oh, those clouds, they've just changed. They're coming closer. They're darker on the bottom than they used to be. I should now, what's the best route along this lake shore here so that I can, get off the water if that turns into a lightning storm?
Yeah.
It's very procedural. I imagine it's how, some dude ice climbing he's not thinking, man, it's amazing to be here at the edge of frozen water and air and climbing along. He's thinking, is this fucking ice going to hold the pick or am I going to fall off this ice face again? I've only done 1 day of ice climbing, so I my crampons, they're not sharp anymore.
Yeah. How long since my last screw went in? Maybe
Exactly.
I should put one in. Can I put one in?
Yeah.
This is why you perhaps didn't write the book while you're on the trip, but rather had to come back to it. You've definitely written books before. It's mostly been instructional martial arts stuff, or have you done something like this project before?
Not really. I have written and self-published a couple of jiu-jitsu books before. Some of them are available for free. Well, if anyone's interested in rolling around on the ground with men trying to choke each other out, otherwise known as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they can go grab one of them for free at grapplearts.com/book. So that's my guide to understanding Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So yeah, I'm kind of familiar with books, and I'm familiar with print books taking forever. I produced one jiu-jitsu book that took 4 years of work.
Wow.
It's the big impact of little tiny things. My co-author and I were like, it'd be really cool if every page had a different template. Oh yeah, man, that sounds really cool. And it'd be even cooler if if I'm standing here and my hands are out, if the edge of my hand went beyond the frame of the picture. Yeah, it would be really cool. Those two decisions easily added 2 years to the project. You have no idea how much longer it's going to take. So I had written about sort of, I'll say, the transformative value of the outdoors, and I'd done some contributions to a couple of canoeing books.
Yeah.
And a couple of shorter chapters, but producing one long narrative and then trying to weave in additional things other than just a narrative. I mean, there were 14 editions, 14 versions of this
Right.
book, and it changed an awful lot between the first and the 14th version.
Yeah, good.
Some
I'd
of them
like
were
to hear that.
oh, some of those were awful. It's like, I don't want to do this, but the feedback I'm getting from the outside world here, the long-suffering readers who I would, hey, what do you think about this way of doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, please don't tell me that you like that, because that means I'm gonna have to change everything.
It relates to some of the stuff in the book, which is, it's one thing to have a dream, but it's going to take work.
This is true. This is true. I mean, there's a reason that, infomercials like get rich while you sleep. I mean, you get rich while you sleep.
I wouldn't
you
say
write
rich.
you write articles. You write articles in your sleep.
How about
apparently.
how about I pay the hydro bill while I sleep?
Okay. This whole myth of,
Yeah.
just open your heart to the abundance of the universe.
Yeah. Think really hard about it and it'll happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Conceive, believe, have it achieve for you.
Yeah.
It's mostly bullshit. I mean, yeah, you do need to conceive. Yeah, you do need to believe. And then you need to, bleed through your eyeballs to make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the, have you got another trip in mind for the next big thing, or are you going to?
I'm kind of antsy right now. Normally, I have a trip planned 9 months ahead of time. And usually I'm on the way back from one trip and I'm already, trying to sprout ideas for the next one, or, what'd be really cool. I don't have that right now. And it's kind of unsettling. I have a couple of plans, but I haven't started dehydrating any food. I haven't started getting the maps yet.
Right.
And there's a lot of, changes in my family going on, all for the best, but it's hard to know. I don't even know if I'm doing a solo trip or a trip with family this summer.
Right.
If I do trip with family, it's going to be a long one. But so you catch me right now at an unsettling time. I don't have a plan, and I don't like it, and I want to have a plan. But it turns out that writing a book, publishing a book, and then promoting a book, I'm not complaining. It's my choice.
Yeah.
But it really undermines your ability to plan outdoor trips. So that's going to change here fairly soon. So if we talk in a couple of weeks, I'll have a better plan, I hope.
Yeah. And if not, a week after that.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do some rapid fire. So if it's your birthday, what do you want, cake or pie?
Cake.
What kind?
The darkest chocolate cake thing that you can imagine.
All right. You just finished writing a book. What's the last good book you read?
Last good book I read. How Fascism Works by Jason Stanley.
What about, is there a movie or TV show that that you love, that you always recommend?
I'll say the last really amazing thing, and it's unfortunate because Neil Gaiman had a wee fall from grace, was the Sandman TV show. So this is a good exercise in separating the artist from the art.
Yeah, which I feel like people struggle with that, but at the same time, like, I know a lot of artists, and they're not all perfect people, right? In fact, a lot of the times it's the opposite.
Yeah.
So
on the way here, I was listening to Eric Clapton, a blues album by Eric Clapton, and Eric Clapton's probably a genuinely terrible person, but man, he's an amazing musician, and I just can't write off everything that he's done.
yeah,
And you go back in history. I mean, good Lord,
yeah,
some
it
of
gets
the
worse.
Yeah,
It gets worse
it
the
gets
farther back.
worse.
And I mean, I feel like everyone has to draw that line for themselves,
Yeah.
right? Because where one person draws it is not going to be where another person draws it, and that doesn't mean that either of you are right or wrong, right? But obviously, there are some things I think everyone can agree are too much.
Yeah. And I think it's okay. I'm telling myself it's okay to have kind of like call it a hall pass. Like, I know this is a terrible person, but I can't write off every single person who's done terrible things. So I'm going to go ahead and enjoy this music and kind of compartmentalize it a little bit.
Yeah.
That's something I struggle with. Anyhow,
I-
Sandman, the TV show was astounding, and I'm actually looking forward to season 2.
Perfect. What about music? You didn't listen to music on this trip. I know, it's something that,
I did a little bit.
right.
I did a little bit, and I rationed it because of power, just electrical power.
Yeah.
Because if you're paddling all day, it's hard to be charging your batteries. You can think, I'll just throw my solar panel on the back and charge a battery. That's not as simple as it sounds. So yeah,
But you
I
did
found
this
blues
for paddling.
for paddling blues.
Yeah.
It just, tales about suffering and being done wrong, and it's
for-
got the right rhythm.
for anything blues. I feel like the way the world is, the blues are going to come back in a big way in the next couple of years.
That's really
Because-
interesting. I think you're probably right.
We're circling the drain for sure. This is a good one with your martial arts experience. Who do you think would win in a fight, a burrito or a grilled cheese sandwich?
I'll go burrito.
Yeah.
Just, too many Mexican boxers.
Yeah, they're tough. What about you? Is there anything? I mean, you had a bear encounter on this trip. You've literally stared down the chance that you might not live. Is there anything that you're afraid of, rationally or irrationally?
Yeah, I'm afraid of quite a few things. I don't feel loneliness when I'm in the bush,
Right.
but I do feel fear and self-doubt all the time. What am I scared of? I'll say the rising tide of fascism in the world. That's the thing that frightens me the most. And, I think the fear that we've hit the high water mark for democracy 10 years ago, and then we're on the downhill slide from that. And that social media, in which I am a participant,
Yeah.
is part of this decline.
Okay, good one. That's better than just saying snakes. What do you do to treat yourself? What's your greatest extravagance? You come back from one of these trips, you wash off or whatever. What do you do to be like, okay, success? I'm gonna treat myself.
It's funny. The first time I really thought about that, I came back from a 4-week solo trip that was really difficult, where I'd mostly been eating for dinner dried pasta with dried tomato sauce. And the thing I wanted more than anything else was fresh pasta. So I went and bought myself a pasta maker and learned how to make fresh pasta.
Yeah.
The mind is a weird thing. And ice cream is the easy answer.
Right. Yeah, ice cream always like just because it needs to be cold, right?
It needs, well, if you travel through the north, sometimes you come through these small native villages. They all have a northern store. It's the old Hudson Bay Company
Right.
store. And they usually have ice cream. And because you're going hard, you're burning probably 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day. You can eat anything you want. At least that's
Yeah.
what I tell myself. So, I'll take a big bag of 2-bite brownies, and I'll take a Haagen-Dazs. And I recognize that if I ate like this in real life, I'd be diabetic and have a heart attack. But I'm telling myself that all that saturated fat and sugar just burn off instantly
Yeah.
when you're working that hard and you're that cold all the time.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I did a big, not anything that big, but a hike in the Yukon tundra, and the first thing I came back to was fish and chips, man. Big, slabby, greasy fish and chips.
I wonder if I came back from a winter trip once where we didn't bring enough clothing. It was, I think, 3 or 4 days in the Adirondacks. And I came back and had this amazing fat tooth. Like if you'd given me a stick of butter, and I'm not a keto guy.
Yeah.
I actually I objectively know that my body does terrible on keto. But there would have been nothing more delicious than just eating straight butter by the spoonful. So maybe your Yukon, was it a winter trip in the Yukon?
It was fall. We definitely hit snow. It
Okay.
wasn't 30 below, but we were cold.
Yeah.
I was underpacked.
So,
Just.
okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe it's just a
Time to
grease.
fatten up. What about regrets? Any big regrets over the last 50 years?
Wow. That's a really tough question. And
You don't have to answer it.
yeah,
But
no, I would totally answer it if I could think of it.
that's the first thing they teach you in journalism 101 is like end your thing with what's your biggest regret.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
In Victoria, anyhow. But I don't know, but I can't speak for every journalism school.
man, you got me stymied.
Yeah,
They're
no stress.
Yeah. If I think of something before the end,
Well,
I'll
similar,
let you know.
right? But if you could go back in time and talk to the 14-year-old version of yourself, or any kid now,
Sure.
what advice would you give
Okay.
to yourself or anyone?
Well, that one's much easier because out of those 5 kids that my mom had, 2 of my brothers died, and they both died at age 21. And so so obviously they had lifelong effects from making really bad decisions in the moment. And 21-year-old men aren't well known for their ability to judge risk and to make intelligent decisions, right? They're addled by testosterone. There's a reason that we send teenagers and guys in their early 20s over the edge of the trench to charge the machine guns on the other side.
Yeah.
Glory, victory, and instant death. And similarly, I deal with, the physical effects of bad decisions that I made. No problem. I won't tap to this neck crank.
Right.
Well, it turns out that not tapping to a neck crank is a bad idea when you're rolling in jiu-jitsu, because if you had tapped out, you might prevent, damage that's going to be forever, that you're going to have to manage for the rest of your life. So maybe some way of conveying the sort of the frailty of life. I mean, on the one hand, you don't want to stymie somebody's zest to go out there and get after it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you can help people make better risk-reward calculations, and that sounds way too academic, but in some ways, talking about risk and the mechanisms for mitigating risk and which risks do you take, the answer is not all of them, right? If you really live for, I don't know, triple black diamond slopes or skiing couloirs, okay, cool. Take your risks there. Don't take your risks on the highway driving to your triple black diamond couloir.
Yeah. We're not going to talk about it because it's in the book, which is Perseverance, Life and Death in the Subarctic, Stephan Kesting. But you do have, 5 pillars of risk management in the book. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I really liked about this book was you were able to weave in, ideas and history, both of the land and your own, along with this grueling, detailed, the minutia that filled your everyday really adeptly, so that, it wasn't just, I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this, and then it wasn't just an airy-fairy, everything linked together. So I think people should get the book and they can hit your 5 pillars of risk management and take that to heart, because you're still here, by hook or by crook in some ways.
Yeah. And this idea of taking risk, I mean, I think one of the central ideas is, who do the consequences of you taking risk fall on, right? If you're, I seem to be using a lot of climbing examples in our chat today for obvious reasons.
We're
right?
in Squamish, so
we're in
fits.
Squamish, yeah. And the word mountain is sort of central to your brand. But imagine a scenario where Alex Honnold is free climbing El Cap. And I think most people here listening to us, and most people we know, would agree that he has the right to do that. Because if he falls off El Cap, probably he kills just himself. I mean, I guess there's a chance of him landing on somebody, but 99 times out of 100, he just kills himself. Now imagine him climbing El Cap, but as a publicity stunt, he straps his 1-year-old kid to his back in a baby Bjorn. Every one of us would turn against him. Why? It's because the consequences of the risk he's taking go beyond himself.
Yeah.
And so that's why we condemn drunk driving. If you really love drunk driving, I'm picking a stupid example, but imagine that this is the thing that gives your life meaning. Great. Get a property, fence it off, get sauced, and go tearing around your back 40
by yourself.
This way, when you wrap it around a tree or into a boulder or into a lake and drown, you just affect yourself. Don't do it on the highway. I think we would all agree that there's a significant, or secondhand smoking versus smoking.
Yeah.
It gets a little bit more complicated than that because, of course, what about, leaving parent-sized holes in kids' lives? What about the effects on search and rescuers? What about the effects on the first responder system?
Medical system.
Sure.
And also kid-sized holes in parents' lives, right?
Sure.
Which isn't nothing.
It's definitely not nothing. I watched my parents basically completely implode as 2 of their kids died in the space of 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And, you don't want to be completely limited by that, but you do have to take it into account.
Yeah.
And so thinking about risk, especially in an outdoor setting, is important because there are things you can do to mitigate it. You can think about all the worst case scenarios that you might run into. And all right, if I get completely lost today, what's my plan? If I break a leg, what's my plan? Just for hiking. Those are 2 reasonable things. I'll add another one. What if I run into a bear? Okay, those are not easy to completely mitigate, but you're probably better off with bear spray than without bear spray.
Yeah.
You're probably better off with an extra fleece and a way to light a fire than not. And you're probably better off with a spot device, and if you know how to use a map and compass, than not. Yeah. Those things don't weigh that much. It just takes a little bit of...
It's easier risk to mitigate.
Yeah. You can't mitigate all risk. Well, Stephan, what if you stumble upon a depleted, radioactive core of
or what if, and this actually is in the book, what if there's mad murderers on the loose, right? So we won't even dip into that anymore because people need to get the book, but that plays a role. That's a risk. There's murderers running around.
Sure. You can't mitigate all... In firefighting, we do this all the time, right? We have a procedure. If this house that we're talking in were on fire, we would have a rough plan. We have a couple strategies, a couple of tactical options. We can't really mitigate for the fact that you've been building an explosives lab here and the fire reaches the explosives lab, blows up and kills everyone within 5 blocks. Okay. Stuff like that happens in meth labs or in grow ops. It could happen, but we have to go with the reasonable set of things. So it will, produce toxic smoke. We can be pretty sure a fire will produce toxic smoke. What do we do to mitigate the toxic smoke?
Yeah. Well, I would say, perseverance. Don't buy it at your own risk. Thanks so much for coming in today.
Thanks so much.
We'll make sure there's links and everything in the comments.
Thanks so much, Feet.
Awesome. Well, how about that? Stephan Kesting. So much canoeing, so many bugs. I feel like 98% of the people on this planet would have quit or hated that trip. But that's what makes people like Stephan interesting, isn't it? They push on and they suffer and they get it done. And bugs. And that's it for this one. Thanks, Stephan, for coming up. Everyone should go to their local Canadian-owned bookstore and get a copy of Perseverance, Life and Death in the Subarctic. And you can learn more about Stephan and his podcast and his martial arts on his website, grapplearts.com. Otherwise, thanks to Shirai Rules and Adrian Gendro for the voice work and the guitar off the top. And thanks to Citizen Watches. And thanks to Stephan for coming in. And thanks to you, dear listener, for tuning in. Be sure to hit up mountainlifemedia.ca for the store and all the crazy updates of what's been happening this winter across the country and what's about to happen this spring. It's a wild world out there, kids, so take your time, but don't waste your time. Be purposeful, be patient, be kind, and be sure to leave the campsite better than you found it.